Have you ever realized that, for most of our lives, we're not really living? We're just trying to explain ourselves to others. I was late because of traffic. I failed because of circumstances. I didn't reply because I was busy. We talk and explain and justify until we forget one simple truth: nobody really cares. I once had a friend who worked in the tech industry. He was smart, passionate, and full of ideas, but every time a project ran into trouble, he spent hours defending himself, writing long emails, holding meetings, giving presentations just to prove the mistake wasn't his. Then there was another colleague, quieter, calmer. Whenever something went wrong, he simply said, "All right, let's fix it." And he did. A few months later, people remembered the second man not because he spoke well, but because he got things done. I'm 60 years old now, and I've learned this: the world doesn't need our explanations. It only sees our results. We live in an age where everyone feels the need to explain on social media, at work, even in our families. The moment someone criticizes us, our first instinct is to say, "Let me explain." But the more we talk, the more drained we become. I want you to imagine this. This morning, you wake up, check your phone, and see a message that annoys you. Instead of rushing to explain yourself, you just smile, put the phone down, and start your day with calm. No need to prove anything. Just act live and let your results speak for themselves. Doesn't that feel lighter? That's the moment you begin to win. Quietly, calmly, without noise or rush, just a subtle shift inside you, yet full of strength. Because sometimes silence is the most powerful answer of all. And when you stop explaining, you begin to feel free. Free from expectations, from judgment, from the burden of trying to please everyone. That is true freedom and the beginning of real success. You know, I've lived more than 60 years on this earth, and I used to be someone who was always trying to make others understand me, understand why I chose a certain path, understand why I failed at something, understand why I couldn't live up to their expectations. I used to believe that if I explained myself clearly enough, sincerely enough, people would finally understand. But you know what, I was wrong. This world doesn't run on explanations. It runs on actions and results. People don't remember what you said. They remember what you did. 1. Action is always louder than words. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is this: people who do more tend to talk less, and people who talk a lot often do very little. I once had a colleague, a brilliant engineer, but every time a project failed, he spent hours writing reports, explaining, proving that it wasn't his fault. His manager, on the other hand, simply said, "It's okay, let's fix it." And then he got back to work. Months later, when everything had passed, everyone remembered the manager, not because he spoke well, but because he got things done. The one who kept explaining, no one even mentioned him anymore. Even the smallest action carries more weight than 1,000 justifications. When you take action, you're speaking the most powerful language in the world, the language of results. 2. Save your energy for what truly matters. Every time you explain yourself, you're draining your mental energy. I once read a study from Stanford University that said the human brain burns nearly the same amount of energy when rationalizing as it does during physical exercise. In other words, every minute you spend justifying yourself is a minute you could have spent doing something. Think about it. If you used even half that energy to learn a new skill exercise or simply breathe in peace, how different might your life feel? When I turned 50, I realized that silence isn't weakness, it's strength under control. Choosing not to explain doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you've learned what's truly worth saying. 3. Freedom begins when you stop needing approval. A close friend of mine, a woman in her mid-50s, once told me that she had spent most of her life trying to please everyone. She explained herself to her husband, her kids, her coworkers for every little decision from her job to how she spent her weekends. But the more she explained, the smaller she felt. One day, she told me, "I'm tired. I don't want to give reasons anymore. I just want to live the way I feel is right." And that day, I saw her smile, the truest smile I'd seen in 10 years. True freedom begins when you stop seeking approval. When you stop explaining, you stop living to be understood and start living to be yourself. Ironically, that's when people start respecting you more. 4. Calmness is the sign of true strength. There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, the power of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. I've met many entrepreneurs and leaders over the years. The most successful ones aren't loud, they're calm. When criticized, they smile. When they fail, they don't blame. When misunderstood, they don't explain. That's what I call mature strength, because only when you truly understand your own worth can you stop needing others to confirm it. Calmness isn't coldness, it's deep confidence. When you know where you're going, no praise or criticism can shake you. 5. Focus on action, not excuses. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You make a mistake, and instead of fixing it, you spend hours thinking of reasons to justify it. You end up exhausted, frustrated, and stuck. We often forget that action is the fastest way out of failure. A single small step forward is worth more than 1,000 "I'm trying." I once mentored a group of older learners. One gentleman told me I was afraid to learn technology. I kept telling my kids, I'm too old for this. But then I realized if I keep explaining, I'll never start. Today, he's using Zoom better than his grandchildren because he stopped talking and started doing. 6. Learn to say, all right, let's fix it. I'll never forget something my old boss used to say. Whenever someone made a mistake, we'd all brace for criticism, but he'd just smile and say, it's okay. Noted. Let's fix it. 5 simple words, yet more powerful than any lecture. I've used that lesson in both work and life. When someone points out my mistake, I no longer rush to defend myself. I simply say, thank you, I'll correct it. And you know what happens. The tension disappears instantly. No more blame, no more friction, only progress. Adults don't need to prove they're right. They just adjust and move forward. 7. Stop explaining. Protect your time. Time is the most precious asset of adulthood. We're not young enough anymore to waste it on endless debates. Every justification steals minutes away from what really matters: family health joy. I've learned that when you stop explaining, you start protecting your inner peace. You no longer obsess over, do they understand me, or did I upset them? You just live your life well every single day. Those who can stay silent are the ones truly conserving their life energy. 8. When you're silent, people begin to listen. Here's something fascinating. When you stop talking, people start paying attention. I've been to many board meetings. The one who talks the most is usually forgotten, but the one who speaks little and speaks with weight commands the room. Silence has its own gravity. It makes people pause. It makes them think. It sends a message: I don't need to argue because I trust what I'm doing. Silence isn't weakness. It's quiet confidence, a strength only the experienced truly understand. 9. Confidence doesn't come from being understood, but from understanding yourself. We spend half our lives trying to make others understand us, but forget to understand ourselves first. Have you ever sat quietly and asked, what do I really want? When you know the answer, misunderstandings stop hurting so much. I once coached a man in his 50s who said, people at work don't respect me. They never understand what I mean. I asked him, do you truly understand what you mean? After that, he told me, I realized I don't need them to understand. I just need to be clear with myself. From then on, he worked with calm and confidence, no longer caught in petty arguments. True confidence doesn't come from recognition. It comes from self-awareness and acceptance. 10. Results are the strongest response. In the end, no one can argue with results. When you do it, you don't need to say it. When you don't, no words can make up for it. Look at people like Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. They were doubted, criticized, even called crazy. But they didn't stop to explain. They built, they created, they persisted. And their results spoke louder than any defense ever could. And you, whether you're starting over, chasing a dream late in life, or simply trying to live meaningfully, remember this. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Just live well, do well, and let time do the talking. I used to fear being misunderstood. But at 60, I've learned misunderstanding won't destroy you, only living untrue to yourself will. Learn to be silent not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough not to prove yourself. Act not for praise, but to see your own growth. Let your results, your calmness, and your quiet confidence become the only explanation you ever need. Because one day, you'll realize this truth. The world doesn't need to hear you talk, it just wants to see you act. And when you let your actions speak, that's the moment you truly begin to win. ChatGPT. I know. Living in a noisy world where everyone has something to say, it's not easy to stay silent. It's not easy to hold back, not to defend yourself, not to keep trying to make others understand you. But one day, you'll get tired, not because people don't understand you, but because you've spent too much of your energy trying to prove yourself. And when you finally stop, when you sit down, take a deep breath and say to yourself, it's okay. I don't need to explain anymore. You'll feel something open up inside. It's quiet. It's clear. And for the first time in years, you'll hear your own voice. Do you know how precious that is? Because most of us have lost it buried under words, opinions, glances, and endless efforts to please others. We forget that true strength doesn't come from being understood, but from understanding ourselves. I once met a woman, a single mother, 52 years old, divorced, unemployed, starting again from nothing. She told me, for years I kept explaining to my family, my friends, my children, that I was trying, that I wasn't weak, but they never understood. Then one day I realized I don't need them to understand. I just need me to believe that I'm doing what's right. From that day on, her life changed. She started exercising, reading, doing small things, but moving forward every day. She stopped explaining to anyone and became stronger than ever. When you stop explaining, you don't become cold, you become clear. You're not distant. You're simply learning to choose the right people to talk to, because not everyone deserves your energy, your words, or your time. I've met thousands of people through life coaching programs in the US, people who spent half their lives just wanting to be understood. But in the end, what they truly needed wasn't approval, it was peace. And peace only comes when you stop chasing validation. Have you noticed that the calmest people are often the most respected, not because they're hiding something, but because they know when to speak and when to stay silent? They understand that words are power, and they don't waste that power explaining to those who don't really want to listen. If you're 40, 50, or beyond, I want you to remember this: you don't have to prove anything anymore. You've already lived through enough storms. You've loved, you've lost, you've learned, you've risen. Now you only need to live truly honestly and for yourself. Not everyone will understand your journey. No one else feels the sleepless nights, the quiet efforts, the tears you've swallowed in silence. So don't waste another second justifying yourself. Let your life, your actions, your values tell the story for you. When you stop explaining, you begin to listen to the world and to your own heart. You start seeing who truly loves you and who's just curious about you. You see what really matters and what's just temporary noise. You know, the beauty of maturity isn't in the number of years we've lived. It's in the calmness we've learned through all the storms. And that calmness begins the moment you no longer need to explain yourself. I want you to try this. Tomorrow, when someone judges you for what you wear, the job you do, or the life you choose, just smile. Don't react. Don't argue. Just smile and think, I know who I am. And that's enough. You'll see the world will lose its power to exhaust you. When you stop explaining, you begin to win not over others, but over yourself. That victory is when you remain calm amidst chaos, when you choose silence instead of argument, when you walk alone yet don't feel lonely because you know the path you're walking belongs to you. I'm not saying this as a lofty philosophy. I've lived 6 decades and I've seen the most successful people. They rarely talk much. They don't try to prove anything. They just do and let time speak for them. And now it's your turn. Let time and your actions be your only explanation. Work quietly, love sincerely, live simply, and let your life shine in silence. If someone understands you, that's wonderful. If not, that's okay too, because what matters most is that you understand yourself. Before we end today, I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I living to be accepted or to be free? If your answer is freedom, then you don't need to say another word. Just smile and keep walking steady, peaceful, and confident. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. Thank you for listening not just to me, but to yourself. If you're standing at a crossroads today, if you're hurt or misunderstood, please remember this: you don't need to explain anything. Because those who truly belong in your life will understand even if you never say a word. And when you walk with calmness, with a free heart, when you choose silence over argument, when you live by your true values, the world will fall quiet and give you its deepest respect. Because in the end, it's not the loudest who go farthest, it's the calmest. And you are that person.